Hello, this is Evan Rogerson, also known as 9 Gang, and today I'm going to have an explanation video breakdown of our summer robot that we built. So, it was pretty good. I did quite well at the scrim. I think it ranked 5th out of 17th. I'll put up the results there real quick. So overall, I think it did pretty well. It's definitely not a perfect robot. It has a couple unique features I haven't seen on any other robots. Overall, it's pretty solid though. We'll probably stick to something similar designed, although better refined for the main Vex U season. Also, something I should add about the robot is almost 100% VRC legal. The intake flips up to start in size for the 18-inch size limit. And then a couple of the other things that make it not technically VRC legal is we have an illegal pneumatic fitting on it. You need to use the blue ones for it to be legal. And then additionally, we ran out of regular sprockets, so we had to use the IQ sprockets right in there, actual IQ sprockets. But there's nothing stopping you from just using regular VRC chain there. So let's get into it, starting off with the drive base. The drive base is pretty typical. It's 450 RPM on 2.75-inch wheels, as well as having 2 tracker wheels, both vertical trackers. Since we had tractions, we weren't too worried about horizontal drift, and I don't really trust the inertial sensor, so we did 2 vertical trackers. So the drive base, 600 RPM carts. We didn't want to have to stack motors just because that would be extra work. And then 36 to 48. 48 on the traction wheels is pretty easy to do. You just have to make sure your spacing is quite specific. But then the trickier part is the Omni wheels. So in order to get those, we had to file down those gears. I'll kind of put a picture up of those on the screen real quick. And then of course it's 3-hole gap, so very tight tolerances here. And screw joints on the wheels, which I'll put a link to in the description. And then all of the shafts had version 2 bearings with nylon in order to save weight and stuff. So pretty simple drive base. Same thing on the bottom side. Nothing too fancy there. Then the trackers, tried a different tracking mount. It worked decently well just for space efficiency. It was more of just using the slop on a screw, just to kind of allow it to bend, and then rubber banded back there. So it worked decently well. Didn't have any issues with them losing traction with the ground, but definitely wouldn't work if your robot needed a lot of wiggle room. Like you were getting a lot of air when you popped wheelies, but since this drive was pretty long and the center of mass was pretty low, it ended up working out pretty fine. And then those are, we took a 3-wide, cut out the middle with tin snips and drill, which was quite the process. And bracing, and then just a rotation sensor. So shaft still supported on 2 sides, got a bearing in there, and then rotation sensor there. So I guess up next is the gold clamp back here. So we went with a different approach than I think most teams, just because we designed this fairly early on in the season. So a lot of teams, I feel like their approach in order to get a goal was to, like, on the inside, like pull it in to rotate it up off the ground. But our approach was more to like push down on the end. Overall, they did the same thing, and this works just fine. So essentially the goal, you'd have this up, goal would slide in. It grabbed them from the corners, not the sides, which is, I know, is opposite of most teams. It required it to be pretty precise, which is why we picked up the goal in auto. But it had a small amount of funneling capabilities, you can see there. So if you're off by just a couple degrees, it's going to be fine. And then push down and lift the goal up off the ground. So as you can see, goal's off the ground by a fairly decent margin right there. And then in order to get the extra force, because this does take a lot of force in order to push down on the goal to rotate it up, we used a lever. So it's a 2-cylinder mount, cylinder 1, cylinder 2. And these are, I believe, 8 holes from the pivot point right there. And then this is only 4 holes. So you're essentially using a lever to double your amount of torque at the cost of half the distance. And then since we have 2 cylinders, it's essentially 4 times the force of just a cylinder pushing down on the end. And then a couple things just to kind of keep it locked in is you can see that screw right there, held in and locked it in. And we also had screws on the side there and there to kind of stop the goal from wobbling around. And that worked pretty well. As long as we picked up the goal correctly, we didn't have any issues with the rings getting it on. It was only if, like, we tried to pick up the goal like that we had issues, because that doesn't work. Definitely something we'll be fixing on our next robot. So yeah, I got it all aired up. So as you can see, Just drive back into it, activate the clamp. Very solid grip on it. And that worked down to about 40 PSI, so never had any issues with that. And on the retraction, you could probably have an air regulator just to save on air. So next, kind of moving on to the intake. The first thing about the intake that I think is really unique and cool is the intake is not mounted on a shaft, it is mounted on a standoff, which I'll definitely get more into explaining later. The main reason behind that is because the gap is longer than 12 inches. This is the 12-inch high-strength shaft, and we didn't have access to any shafts that were longer than 12 inches, so we had to figure out something else. So we ended up using standoffs, which I would describe best as a medium strength shaft. So I'll put up some stuff from the notebook and kind of do a voice overview on how we built this. But essentially this sprocket is essentially connected to this the standoff, which is acting as a shaft. And then these gears are also connected to the standoffs in such a way that they have to spin together. So that's pretty cool. It's very low friction. Quite a fan of it. So the intake is one motor, and that's a 600 RPM motor, geared 2-for-1, so 1,200 RPM for speed, and it's on 1.625-inch flex wheels, so it's faster since the wheels are smaller, so if you want to get the same linear speed, it needs to be a pretty fast intake. And then it's just mounted on a hinge, which we just used bearing pillows because we didn't really care. Mounted on bearings, could definitely come up with something better. Overall, I would say the intake works quite well. Let's get the program started. So it gets the rings right up in there. Can do them from pretty much all angles. These half cuts on the polycarb act as kind of a funnel. We're not sure why, but this side kept having issues with the rings like riding up and wanting to go up. So we added a small C channel there, and that solved the issue. It gets them to a very nice consistent spot every time. Then as for the intake itself, it's a piece of polycarb. I'll get to the cutout later, but it's just kind of mounted by zip ties on the side, which kind of allowed the ramp to bend, which ended up actually being kind of useful. And then it's just mounted standoffs running across there, and then a piece of a bearing pillow just to kind of keep it mounted in a central pivot point. So I think having a little bit of flex was actually quite helpful just for getting the rings up off the ground. That small little cut piece of flex wheel was just kind of for the ends, because right here, as you can see, our main flex wheels aren't actually touching the ring at all, but this one is ever so slightly. So while it's not as fast, it can still allow us to intake without having any bald spots, and that needed to be smaller, which I'll kind of get to later. And moving on to the hook system, it's mounted on cylinders, but I'll kind of get to that later. It's just 200 direct on a 12 tooth and a 12 tooth down there. Nothing really fancy here. The hooks are double-sided, which I will get to later. So nothing fancy there. That's just basic hooks. One thing we were working on, but we didn't get to in time before MOA, is adding a color sensor. So essentially, because hooks, the really cool thing about them, which I think is why they'll be big, is you can ring sort, because if you stop the hook right at the top, you can just throw the ring off without actually putting it on the stake. So I think you could just like stick a color sensor right there and have it automatically like stop there for a second. If you were, say, going for a red goal and you picked up a blue ring, you could just do that and you're not going to score the ring. But then if you had the correct colored ring, you could just score it right on. So then moving on to the actually cool part of the robot is the wall stake mechanism. So as you can see here, there are cylinders which are connected to the lift, and they are mounted to the base of our tower, which triangle braced down to the front of the drive base. And these cylinders they're double acting cylinders, the old legacy ones, but they're treated as single actings. They only have a fitting going into the bottom fitting. They don't have anything going into the top. And you can see down there, you can see the solenoid is down there, and one of them has a T-fitting going off to the rest of the robot, and then the other T-fitting is just a little loop. Doesn't actually connect to anything else. You can take your ring, and originally we had it working with two, but because this used to be motorized, but the pneumatics are actually too fast, so I'll just kind of show that off. Like I was saying earlier, the rings would automatically go to the correct positions, and then you could raise the lift, and Like I said, that's why we ended up adding this polycarbonate cover. We can only do one ring at a time because the top ring will fling off on you. And that will fall down if you were to lower the lift for whatever reason. So we would actually, this is what this sheet of poly was for, and it was all cut by hand. We don't have a CNC machine. I was saying earlier, this whole system was automated. So you could intake, and then it would automatically stop in the correct spot, and then raise the lift. So a lot happens when you raise the lift. First of all, the intake is connected via paracord, so that it pivots up slightly, which is important for reasons I'll get to later. And then obviously the entire lift goes up. The ring doesn't fall off because the polycarb sheet on top of it. And this is actually at the correct angle. I don't have the field set up to score onto the wall stakes. I'll put some videos.
There's a ring in the way. Okay, nice.
The reason that this intake has to lift up is because we actually couldn't get close enough to the wall stake. So now that the intake is lifted up, when you drive into the wall, this can actually get pushed back a little bit. And then the reason for that cutout in the polycarbonate is to sort of act as like a funnel to help you align with the bottom of the wall stake. So then you would just drive on over to it and then score your ring. Now, this was pretty heavy on air consumption. We have 2 of the legacy tanks right here, zip tied in there. We could only go up about, well, in total, we could do about 8 actuations in a match, but we also actuated the clamp 3 times in auto. So we could only get 5 actuations in a match, which is 5 rings on the wall stake, which originally we thought was going to be a huge issue, but considering how unimportant wall stakes were, we never actually scored, I think, more than 2 wall stake rings in any of our matches, just because we didn't have the opportunity or we were under defense or whatever. I think definitely you could use bigger tanks. Our rubber banding system wasn't great. It was just kind of going over the top like this to kind of pull it up, but it didn't honestly do a lot of force. It really just kind of helped lift the rate of the intake, because once you get up to this position, that's where you really start running out of air, because now you have to lift up the entire intake. You could probably also have these set to a second set of actuations, or just make it lighter in general. But yeah, you could definitely get more actuations with the older tanks, or if you're smarter about how you built this, and probably just make this longer out the back so you could easily add banding going right down to the bottom. Just a couple other random things to mention. Reason for that C channel is with the ring, when it was resting in this position, when your hooks would run, it would essentially keep the ring back of it in place. So instead of just getting the whole entire ring lifted up, it would just kind of get pulled out like that, which worked great. Didn't have any issues once we added that piece. The robot is quite big. It's slightly over 17 inches wide. It's 34 holes, but then you also have like some screw heads sticking out the side. And the reason it was originally so wide is because originally we were picking up the rings inside of the robot, so the rings had to be able to fit inside between the motors. Eventually we ended up ditching that to add the intake, but too late to already just rebuild the entire robot. And then it's quite long, just because you need a lot of space to have the ring there, go up, put it on the back, and then be able to rotate the entire robot. The only other team that I've seen do a design with these double-sided hooks is team 1166Z from Colorado. We spent a fair amount of time talking with them after MOA, because it was really cool getting to talk to them, because I didn't talk to them at all over the summer. I didn't even know who they were, but we showed up to MOA with the exact same ideas, slightly different implementations. They use a PTO to power their lift. We obviously just use straight pneumatics, but it was really cool. Like, the robots functioned the exact same, despite being built differently. So that was a really cool thing. And they did fairly well at MOA. They won round of 16, match 1, definitely an upset there. Part of the reason we liked the pneumatic lift was because it was more consistent, getting it to go to the same height every single time, because we added these high strength shaft collars, act as like a hard stop to stop the cylinder from raising any higher, which got us to a consistent height to be able to score onto the wall stakes. And these standoffs were originally out there. Now they just kind of act as a hard stop on the way down. But originally we tried to have a mech to make scoring the autonomous win point a bit easier. I'll put a video up of that up on the screen real quick. So I think that's everything with the robot. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them down below. I will do my best to answer them. We're not keeping any secrets about this robot, so ask away. And make sure you like the video and leave a comment to just help out with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe so you don't miss any future robot stuff. All right, see you in the next one.